All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone to the second class of our live session. I think it was titled that we're going to do video analysis. We actually are going to pivot. If you were on my first week's class, we didn't get through the entire presentation, so we're going to continue with front court defense principles today. But before I begin, I think it's important that I send out my thoughts to all the people affected by the virus and all the medical personnel out there that are fighting this. I definitely miss being a part of the water polo community and miss seeing all you guys on a daily basis. So I hope you guys know that it's nice definitely to be here with you today and get a chance to see you guys, even if it's in this virtual world, to stay connected and to continue working with you guys. So I'm going to work on getting these, and I've been working on the last few days, actually getting these recordings uploaded online, and I'm working with totalwaterpolo.com. So I know that some people have reached out and asked to get them up online so you can watch them if you miss them. I will be recording them. This one will be recorded, and I have no problem also just sharing my presentation. So feel free to reach out. I'll share my email here in a second. Next, we're going to continue doing these live classes. If you got a chance yesterday, Brett Lathrop, the former MIT coach, former UCLA assistant, did a ball skills and drills class last night that was awesome. We had over 70 kids attend. Actually, I got to see some parents try to do some of it too. It was phenomenal. We're going to continue doing those things into next week. We're actually going to add a nutrition element and a weightlifting and working out element as well. So specific to water polo players. So if you get a chance, I think it'll be really cool. We're going to update all of that online. So if you get a chance, you can either follow us on our Instagram or Twitter for Premier Water Polo website. We're going to have all that up online for you guys. I also want to give a big shout out to Coach Coker. He was the person that kind of started this whole thing. If you get a chance, he does coffee with Coker. You just follow him on Twitter. He has all of his video links or Zoom call links on there for you guys to start following. They're great professional development opportunities for coaches and for athletes. I think it's a good time to go and listen, maybe not to necessarily interject, but to listen to some of the coaching points that he's making and the things that he's talking about. It's pretty great. Without anything else, I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or just unmute yourself. And go ahead and ask them. This is meant to be interactive. I want to stay connected with you guys. I want to bounce ideas off each other, and so please feel free. So I'm going to just start sharing my screen. And if you have issues too, seeing something or it's not working over Zoom, I know this is kind of a new world for all of us. So please feel free to reach out. Okay. So can you guys all see all that? See that? Yeah. Maybe thumbs up. Cool.
Yep.
All right, cool. So like we started on last time, I'm going to do a quick 10-minute refresher before we get into the meat of this. Before I begin, here's my email. So if you ever want to ask questions, feel free to reach out. If you want to ask about a specific topic, if you'd like a specific topic to be covered, I'd be more than happy to. We're also working, again, I mentioned this earlier, working with Total Water Polo to upload it to their website, but they also have this web link. If you go to it, they're listing all the professional development opportunities right now that are out there. And so they're going to have our live feed there too, but I believe they're putting Coach Coker's coffee's Zoom calls on there as well. So, all right, here we go. So a quick refresher. The first thing that we talked about last week was getting down the importance of the why. And I talked a little bit about how in society now, and the way we are with Google, with our phones, that we're all concerned with getting the answer. And if you're looking for the answer, today is definitely not the day for you or the presentation for you. This hopefully is going to give you some of my ideas and concepts that you can apply as either a student of the game if you're a player, but as a coach, hopefully offer you some different ways of thinking about the game and definitely how I approach the game. Next, after that, I began with asking the first question about the game and kind of building out how I think about defense and how I think about offense and just how my general approach, which is how do you win the game? And I gave you guys a Wikipedia definition, and the line was the team with the most goals at the end of the game wins. So if we just break down water polo in the most simple form, okay, we need to score more goals than the other team, or we need to give up less goals than the other team, or give up less goals and score more than the other team. So if that's the most simple breakdown. We have an offense and a defensive component to that. The defense's objective is to give up less goals. The offense's objective is to score more goals. And that's pretty simple, just a general concept. And today our focus is simply and solely on the defense. But what we talked about last time and what we're going to build into for a lot of the presentation today is that a lot of your defense starts with the way that you play offense. So before we begin, I broke down the conversation in defense into 3 topics. Okay, one is if you want to give up less goals, then give up less goals in general. The first thing that you can do is limit the other team's possessions. If they get less opportunities, they have less chances of scoring. And so there are 4 ways I've kind of broken that down. And there's actually 1 or 2 other ways that I'll mention today as well. First is the sprint. Okay, if you win the sprint, it's an additional possession. The next is jump balls. Third would be winning 60-40 balls. And the other one is just not turning the ball over. The more that you turn the ball over, the more possessions the other team gets, the more opportunities they have to score. So that's the first, and that's a simple one. The other one that I kind of think of that's important is that the longer that you have, I know this is big in football in particular, but the longer that you have the ball, so earning exclusions, not being like necessarily a run and gun team, also the less possessions they're going to have, and therefore most likely scoring less, or hopefully scoring less. The next thing that we talked about was limiting shots. Okay, so we want to limit possessions, we want to limit shots. The first way to limit shots is just to limit possessions. Okay, and the next thing is, and that's a ball pressure pump. So just think of that as putting pressure on the ball. The more pressure on the ball, the less opportunities they are going to have to shoot. Okay, so we're going to go through that. And the last thing is we want to limit the number of high percentage shots. So I gave you guys a chart last time. You can see one is an NBA just chart over the years where you can see in the red where teams are shooting from the most at this point. To the right of that, you can see what I would consider the highest percentage shots in the game are. Everyone has a little bit different of a list, but this is where I'm going to build my defense around. So if we can do these 3 things, limit possessions, limit the number of shots, and limit the number of high percent shots they're going to get, presumably we're going to give up less goals. Okay. And so the way I broke this down was starting from the beginning, which I think is important. We went through this already, so I'm going to skip through this. But the idea is that the best way of doing this is to get into a pressing defense. Because if we have a pressing defense, that means that there's going to be pressure on the ball, and it's going to limit those high percentage shots. So the way I started last time was with how you do it. We started with our front court offense. And I want particularly the coaches, but also the players to think about water polo a little differently. And I get this all the time, like from coaches or players. Good coaching one is like, we're so bad at 5-on-6, and that's definitely a problem sometimes. But instead of just fixing the 5-on-6, you could just start by playing better defense and taking less exclusions. Then you'd have to play 5-on-6 a little bit less. Or a player that's like, I'm so bad at drive defense, or I'm not great at drive defense. Well, maybe it's not the actual drive defense. Maybe it's your positioning before they start the drive, like your general defensive positioning. And so the root of the problem for defense, honestly, I think most of the time starts with your front court offense. And if you think about like my teams in the past 2 years, for example, a lot of people gave us a lot of credit for the 2 championship games that we played in against Newport, where we only gave up 3 goals and 4 goals. But on I think the piece that a lot of people miss is that maybe the aspect that we did better than we ever did the rest of the season or any other team was that we didn't turn the ball over. We played within the system, and that's super important. And we talked about a little bit why that was so important last time. Because if you play within a system, it allows for predictable turnovers, limits ill-advised shots, and it limits it makes it predictable when you turn the ball over. It limits ill-advised shots, and it also limits turnovers. And those 3 things, and we're going to get to in a second, why they're so important. And if you hear any coach, that's a picture of Greg Popovich, obviously San Antonio Spurs. He talks all the time to his players about playing within the system. And every coach has their own system. Everyone wants different shots or different looks depending on the makeup of their team. But it's super important their team plays within it, because then they'll all know when there's going to be a shot. They're all going to know when there's going to be a turnover. And then there's the teams that don't have that. They're playing with unstructured play. They're unpredictable turnovers. They're allowing for ill-advised shots. They're high-volume turnover teams. And those are going to be the teams that are going to often give up more goals. So when you start thinking about defense, I really want you to start thinking about the way you're playing offense. And that might be more of the issue. If you can see down below, too, that's a picture of Shaquille O'Neal taking a three-pointer and a helicopter backhand. So obviously things that we probably don't want. Okay, so next we need to think about transition. So we played a really good front court. Okay, so we're limiting turnovers. We're smart. Hopefully, we're getting back. There are three aspects of transition that I think are really important when you think about playing your defense. One is, are you fast enough? Is your fitness good enough relative to the competition that you're playing against? And the fitness and training component, I think, is often way overvalued. I mentioned this last time, and people ask me this all the time. So it's not a great question, I don't think. But how much do you guys swim? We don't swim that much at all. I think comparatively to most schools, we train really consistently. But I think that you have to meet a certain threshold for swimming. But people often think that they're getting beat on the counterattack because they're not fast enough. And I don't necessarily think that's true. We're going to get to the next part, which is anticipation. And I think that's a much bigger component of getting back on defense. And again, it goes back to our front court offense, which is the only way to be able to anticipate the ball turning over is by making it somewhat predictable, that your kids know that within your system, this shot is supposed to happen. This pass is supposed to happen. And so the things that we talked about last time that you should be aware of are, one, your identity. How fast are you? What does the other team think about you? Are they trying to take advantage of you? Who are you defending, or who is defending you, I should say? Are they really fast? Are they a counterattack player? I think I'm thinking of, Oaks Christian this past year, when you're playing against a kid like Alika, you have to know that he's going to want to get out and transition. So you're going to have to be even more prepared to get back defense. And the next is like situational and circumstantial situations kind of going on in the game, which are, you need to know where the ball is, obviously. You need to know how much time is left on the shot clock. If the shot clock is running low, you should be aware the ball is going to probably turn over. You should be aware of what the coach is yelling. If the coach is telling his team to take off, as a player, you should be aware of that. As a coach, you should also be aware that he's doing that and maybe calling your players back. You should be aware of the score. If you're up by 2 with a minute left, they're probably going to be really aggressive getting out in transition. And then the last one is those puzzle pieces fitting together, which is just inferring just through other things in the game what is most likely going to happen. Okay, so after anticipation is the protecting. And we talked a little bit about this again, and we're not going to go into as much depth as we went into last time, but protecting your body and making sure that as I'm getting back to defense, I'm staying low, I'm under control, I'm engaging with the officials, and I'm keeping my body away from that offensive player so I can't be grabbed, or I can't get my body manipulated so that they're getting some sort of advantage on me. All right, so let's get into like more of the details of stopping transition. So again, this is still the refresher from last week, but there are no turns in water polo. I don't want my athletes, I don't want the coaches coaching with me to think that there are turns. I want us to be so aggressive, and I want us to mentally transition. So as soon as that ball is shot and we turn the ball over, we're right back into taking that ball back. We want our turn again. So this is like you'll hear me, if you ever see me coaching, I say this all the time to the kids. It's my turn, and then it's my turn again. I go back and take the ball back. Okay, so as we're getting back into transition, there are 2 elements that are really crucial. One is the communication, and we talked about pointing, we talked about communicating and speaking with your voice, we talked about listening, and we also talked about how it's a two-way communication, that often communicating is on, we say it to a player, like, you need to communicate, you need to talk more, but there's also a listening aspect to it too. You need to be looking around, you need to see that player pointing at you, you need to hear your coach yelling at you. And the next is awareness. What should you be aware of as you're playing transition? So you need to get on your back. There's a picture of the kid on his back, like kind of looking with his head up. You need to be aware of the ball, your opponent, the advantage in the center. So as I'm getting back, hopefully we had that good front court defense or offense. We're getting back in transition. We're getting to our back. We're looking and we're communicating with each other. And there are really two options from this point. One is there's no advantage, right? We can get immediately into the press that we want. We can go and take the ball back. We can hopefully force a turnover that and get the ball or prevent a shot. Or as we talked about, there's an advantage. And we need to know how to attack both of those situations. Okay, if there's an advantage, what are you going to do? So when you get beat in transition, there are two positions. There's either what we call, or I call, the jammer. This is what we would consider the player out in front of the transition. Okay, and their goal, their entire goal, and we'll get a little bit more into the specifics here in a second, and I can show you guys in some future slides, their goal is to slow down the vertical progress of the ball and the other players in order to allow the trailer to catch up. So the idea is the jammers, the players out in front of transition, want to slow that team down so the player that's beat in transition can end up getting back. And obviously the other player is the player that's beat, the trailer. The player trailing the advantage, and their goal is simple. They want to minimize the length and time of the advantage. So if you're getting pulled through on, you're getting beat, your job is to minimize that advantage by getting back, protecting your body, and taking the most efficient and effective line back to defense. So we tried to do video last time, and it didn't really work. A big shout out to Paul Split. I don't know if he's on the call, but he sent me some images, and I actually just copied them, and it was really cool. So I have this little whiteboard here. So I want to make this simple, and I only use 2 players, and we'll add more as we kind of get further out into this whole thing. But hopefully this makes it a little easier for you guys to see. So the jammer is the player out in front that we talked about, and the trailer is the player behind. So assuming the player on that right side got beat. And the jammer's first responsibility is to get on their back out in front of the transition. And the reason is we want to be aware of what's going on. We want to be able to communicate, and we want to be able to see the ball and put pressure on whether it's hopefully maybe the goalie or any other player that's going to be outletting the ball. And the goal is when you get on your back is a stunt, and you want to force these players wide. Okay? And the reason that we want to force them wide is the further wide they're moving down the pool, the less they're going vertically down the pool towards our goal. And if they're going wide, we're actually giving our trailer more time to catch up. Okay, so if we can force them to get wider to have to get the ball out of the goal, they will then limit their vertical progress, allowing our trailer to get back in time. So we also want to delay the outlet. Okay, this is something that I mentioned last time. So not only do you want to get on your back initially and like kind of stunt and force them wide, you also want to delay the outlet. And this is a really, I think a simple concept when you understand it. But the further down the pool the players get, the further wide they have to get as well, because the jammer doesn't have as much time to react to the ball when it's being outletted. Okay, so if the ball is being outletted quickly, the ball can go right to that player. Easy. But if the ball's back with the goalie and it's getting passed much further down the pool, it takes a lot more time with the ball in the air, therefore forcing those players to get wider. And the wider they go, the less they're going vertically down the pool. There's also the element that I've kind of added here that there's decreased accuracy. The further down the pool, okay, the goalie has to make a much longer pass, and all of a sudden that ball may be sprayed, be thrown into a poor location. And so that jammer did their job. So your goal is, again, make them get wider and slow their vertical progress on the pool. Now, one thing that we haven't talked about, and I didn't get to mention last time, is what do you do when the ball is passed out? And you have a few goals. Okay, your goal is you want to create more passes. Okay, more passes between the players, as long as they're not scoring off one of those passes, makes more risk. And if you stunt at them and make them think that you might steal it from them, they're going to also get wider to protect away. And again, as they get wider, they're not moving vertically down the pool. And you may even want to get them to pick the ball up. If they pick the ball up, they're stopping their vertical progress as well. So here, again, I kind of had this where he goes back and forth a little bit and the players get wider to kind of show it off. Again, I'll make sure you guys get the presentation. Hopefully. And are there any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself if you do have questions. So the next element of transition is the trailer's responsibilities. So the jammer's trying to slow them down. The trailer has a very simple job. You want to limit the advantage by protecting your body. So there's not like just leaving your body out there to get kicked off or shinned off and giving up a huge advantage. Okay, but you also want to take the most efficient line possible. So this first line is something that you don't want to do, and you see all the time. If you're swimming, a player swimming with their head down, they don't necessarily know the best line to go, or they're just chasing the ball out of the goal. You have to get your head up, and you have to be reading off your jammer. This would be an awful line, right? They just took way too long to get that pool. You want to have that most efficient line to get all the way back into good position. So the straightest line possible. And then as you get back, you want to make sure you're getting all the way into good position, and we're getting back into our press. Cool. So again, we're going to get through this kind of quick. These are my standards that I've written for my team. Again, you're more than welcome to use them or come up with other ones. I'm sure that there are plenty of other ones. Just to quickly review, jamming, your standards are to force the offensive player to get wider by pushing out. Okay, you want to get out and push them out, stunt. Delay the outlet of the ball to decrease accuracy, and again, force them to get wider. Utilize stunting and jamming to stop the outlet, but also to make them slow vertical by picking the ball up. Force as many predictable long and lob passes as possible. And then you never, ever, ever give up a cross pass in the goal. Ever, because that's the highest percentage shot in our game. Next, the trailing standards, never take a backcourt exclusion. That's simple. Take the most efficient line. You never swim on the same line. That's so you won't get excluded. And then take ball side position when possible and always finish in the correct defensive position. Cool, I got it. Sorry guys, it's really tough for me to see the chat. So if you have a question, just go ahead and shoot go ahead and unmute yourself if you feel confident enough to do it. How do we complete transition defense? So there is, as we're building out here, we're finishing up our transition and we're getting into our press. So we talked a little bit about system-based play with anticipation awareness allows us to immediately press, where the unstructured play or lack of awareness leads to a disadvantage on the counterattack, and therefore we have to jam and trail. But our goal is still to get back into the press. So as we're finishing out, in either scenario, the goal is to get back into a press. And we're going to talk a lot more about why we want to be in a press, but it has to do kind of back with those original standards of if we're trying to limit possessions, we want to force turnovers. If we want to give up less shots, we want to put more pressure on the ball. So all of this is kind of getting us back into that press. Okay, so finishing in the correct position. How to get into press. As we're finishing out on defense, we want to get into what I would call ball side position, where this is the defenders in a position to deny a direct pass to their opponent. So you basically, in the most simple terms, you want to be between your player and the ball, so the ball can't be thrown right to your player. Now, in water polo, the ball can always be thrown over your head into water, so you can never just completely deny someone the ball, but you can at least play in direct line, so there's never a ball on a straight line being passed out. And we're going to talk a little bit about why that's important next. So,
Brian, this is Felix.
Yeah.
Brian, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'd like to kind of have an idea of what you're thinking as far as like, so you have the jam and the trailer's catching up. Is there a time where do you ever, or how do you transition? Because I might have missed it from jamming into possibly, I don't know if you're going to, like at the 6 meter, the 6 meter line, do you come back into a zone if you're down and then repress, or like that area from going from a jam, is it by the number of passes, or once they get to a certain point in the pool, they have to come off of their person?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean? Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think to sum up your question, so one is that the goal of the jamming would be to slow the transition down enough that our trailers gets back in time where there is no more advantage. That's like the general goal of it. So and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, to your point, and what we'll get to later, is that if you are playing, if you are out of control in offense and you're putting yourself in positions in which they're able to pull through and get out on the counterattack on you and gain those advantages, you can't press, because they're going to either score on you or move the ball to a place in which they can enter the ball to their center, which you're going to have to play in a zone. So today we're only talking about like the most simple terms of we're assuming that our jamming did a good enough job that we can get back into a press because our trailer had time to catch up. But definitely as we get more advanced, we can talk about like those situations more specifically. So getting into press, if we're covered immediately, again, very simply, as they move down the pool, we're getting in the lanes. And if you see me coach, I'm super aggressive in our press. So that you want to be in a line to deny the ball. So you can see every position, there's no direct line. Ignore X3 right now. It is in kind of an unusual position that we won't necessarily get to today. But every position, if the goalie is going to outlet the ball, it's going to have to be thrown over those players' heads to get to it. If we're down, obviously a different scenario. And to Felix's point, or Coach Mercado's point, I should say, if we're down, it's important to mention that sorry, I lost my train of thought. That we may not be able to get into a press, that we may have to end up coming in the zone. Today, we're going to pretend as if our jammers did a good enough job jamming that our trailer had time to get back. So as we're moving down the pool, okay, the ball has been outletted. Hopefully we did a good enough job jamming that we're finishing out. And then as we recover, we're all getting into ball side position. One thing that I see all the time is that players, especially if you're looking at the player that's in red trailing, they'll stop in this position. And what ends up happening is at the end of the counterattack, if they stop in that position, they end up getting beat, even if they're all the way back because they didn't get their body and hips into the right position. Okay. So this is where we get into the heart of it. We finally made it. I know some of you have been patiently waiting. This is the second Zoom call that we've done. We're going to get into the meat of the conversation, which is front court defense. So if you look at the half court that's right there, just so we're all have the same vernacular, these are the positions. We have X1 defending the one position, X2, X3, X4, X5, and then the center defender. So we don't have an X6. I know some teams use that, but that's what we use the numbering system and the numbering system I'll refer to. So let's go back to the beginning. Assuming that we've gotten back into a situation in which we can get into a press, we're now in half-court defense. And when you're thinking half-court defense, we've basically only left these things on the board. So there's a cross pass to an immediate goal that we can still give up. There's the penalty shot that we can still give up. But then really what we're going to focus on is the drive, the center shot, and the 5-meter foul. And so everything that we're doing now is built on denying those opportunities. So all right, so building around our press. Why do we want to press? If there's one conversation my kids are over having with me at Harvard-Westlake, it's this exact one. This I hammer in all the time. Okay, there are 4 main reasons that we want to do it. One, again, it limits the number of shots. It's going to limit the number of high percentage shots. It's going to force turnovers. And one of the things that I want to talk a little bit about today is that all of the phases of the game are connected. And if you are, to Felix's point, forcing turnovers, and those turnovers generally are going to be unpredictable. They're going to force the team in bad positions. You're going to be much closer to those players. You're going to get advantages. And you can either in those advantages score or get the other team into a zone. And then it's much more difficult for the other team to force those turnovers. You don't want the other team to press you. And the last thing is that it's mentally and physically incredibly taxing. And there's some attitude about playing in a press too, that you're dictating to the defense like how you want to play. If you ever get a chance, there's the GIF that's playing. I don't know if you guys can see it. It might be lagging, but it's Kevin Love playing defense on Steph Curry in Game 7 of the 2017 finals, 16 finals. And it's like a really great clip of like on-ball defense that I think even water polo players can learn from. So why not play in a zone? There's absolutely a time to play in a zone. I definitely don't want to say that, but I want everyone to understand the moment that you play in a zone, you've conceded a shot. You've then said you get a shot. And all of a sudden, when we kind of go back to that first principle of limiting shots, you've now given a shot. And anytime the other team has an attempted shot, they have a chance of scoring every time. So we didn't give that up before, and now we've given that up. And you've also probably given up, to a certain extent, your counterattack, because now there's a buffer between you and the player that you're defending. And so they're going to have that leeway, that time to get back to defense. How do you maintain a press? Okay, so in a press, we need to maintain ball side position. So you're always in those denial positions. So you're always forcing the ball to have to never being passed directly to anyone's hand. Okay, so how do we do that? There are 3 ways. We need to slow the movement of the ball. We need to increase the predictability of the movement of the ball, and you need to deny direct passing lanes. Those are the 3 things that we're going to focus on. So the bottom line of this is the ball has to move slow enough from one position to the next that each person, and most importantly, your center defender, has time to move. I'm going to say that again because I think it's like the most simple way of saying why, like what you need to do in a press. The ball has to move slow enough from one position to the next that each person, most importantly, our center defender, has time to move. And I'm going to show you just like a quick clip of this so you guys can see. But here's just an easy way of seeing it. The ball gets passed, and it gets passed away from this player. So now the player at 3 has to go get the ball. And now everyone has time to move defensively, including the center defender, which allows us to continue to stay ball side, which allows us to continue to press. The moment the center has ball side position or position to the ball, we have to probably run a zone. And again, as the ball moves, we have time to move and continue to take position as long as the ball isn't being passed directly to anyone's hand. So how do you maintain a press? There are 3, when I break it down, there are 3 types of defenders in a press. 3. There's one, the player that's defending the ball. Okay, you have the player defending the opponent with the ball. The off-ball players. Okay, so if you're defending anyone but the center right now, we're going to consider that off-ball. And then you have the center defender. Okay, so whoever is playing center defense for you. So we're going to break these down one by one. So keeping in mind the things that we just talked about, slowing the movement of the ball, each of those positions is going to try to do or help us accomplish those goals. So the first one we're going to focus on is on-ball defense. Okay, so on-ball, what should your goals be? You want to put as much pressure on the ball without fouling. I know in our sport, one of the interesting things is that there are so many fouls called all the time that players begin to think that they're not important. I think fouling is one of the, and if you're in a press, the worst things that you can do, because it does a whole bunch of things. It stops the clock. It gives that player a free pass. A free pass is super valuable because now you can make a pass to anyone in the pool relatively easily. You can shoot the ball if you're outside of 6 meters now. You can even pop the ball, play, and swim the ball in and score now. All of those things, and you're obviously giving them more awareness because they've stopped and you have to give them space. So putting as much pressure on the ball without fouling. Next, you want to force them away from the goal and deny their next logical pass. So I'll show this in the next little slide here. But the goal is that you want to play in the lane between where they want to pass to. And you should have a good sense of where they want to pass to, depending on where you're defending in the
center.
Next, you want to waste time. You want to defend them, and you want them to hold the ball for a really long time by putting so much pressure on them that they have to hold the ball, and that clock keeps running, and they're getting less time to attack. And then you want to limit their awareness. So if you're playing really tough, hard-nosed defense on them, it's very difficult to see what's going on. So if a player does get open or there is a direct line pass, that you're buying your other defenders time to reposition at other positions. So here's a good, hopefully a good example for you. Ball's outletted here to 2. Okay, the assumption being that we fronted it center initially. That should be a general assumption. But we know if the ball's outletted to 2, okay, the next logical pass, if we're in a press, is going to be to 3. So your body and your hips are up in that passing lane or angle so that it makes it really difficult to move the ball to the next player. As the ball's passed there, you want to move and deny the ball to the next player. Again, to that next logical pass. And that's at least how aggressive I teach it. I know some people aren't as aggressive in terms of playing that parallel to the goal line. Here's a really good example. So Ryan Neapol, I have some great clips of him. I know this is tough. He's going to be the X2 defender, and I can share this clip with you anytime, but this is from the 2018 championship game. He's the X2 defender right here. So I'll try to pause it on him. He's defending Mo Kenny, who is one of Newport's best attackers, left side player. And I want you to see the effort that he puts into playing defense. And he's trying to show his hands, and he's using and engaging his legs to deny that pass. And he's assuming, especially after goal, which he's assuming right, that our center defender is taking position, and he wants to deny the angle and deny that pass there. He's forcing Mo away from the goal, okay, away from the mouth of the goal, and he's making him waste time as he's doing it. So the ball is just sitting there, and he's got a fake, and he's continuing to work. I teach my players, very importantly, we often use other players as buoys to help us stay above the water. You should be able to stay above the water while you're defending someone. So that right hand that's down for Ryan is not using him to stay above the water. He's engaging his legs and his core to stay up. And again, that's a great job because now that ball's passed way out here. So now that the ball's passed way out here, it's giving everyone time to reposition and move at every other position. So we're going to come back initially, but you can see that we're fronted now. So this is great on-ball pressure defense. by Ryan. We're going to skip some of these just because for time's sake, but I think everyone's kind of got it. So we're going to move on to, we talked about pressing on ball. We're going to move to off ball defense. And again, keeping those three things in mind of slowing the movement of the ball, increasing the predictability of the movement of the ball, and denying direct passing lanes. So if you're away from the ball, the biggest thing is you need to stay between your player, okay, that you're defending and where the ball is. So you're constantly moving your bodies and hips to maintain ball sides and deny direct line passes. If the ball is ever thrown on a line, you did a bad job. And the player on putting pressure on the ball did a bad job. This is James Harden playing off-ball defense down here, by the way, which is funny. Okay, so keeping in mind off-ball defense, there are three things that I think that I try to focus on with my athletes when it comes to playing off-ball defense. It's where are you in relation to where the ball is, where your player is in relation to the pool in the ball, and your ability to move in relation to the person you're defending. So the third one is just that you're going to have to make adjustments depending on the player that you are and the player that you're defending. I've had some great defenders like Ryan Neepel who can be really aggressive in his press. And then I've had some players that don't maybe move as well that may have to play, like on Johnny Hooper, for example. They're going to have to play a little bit lower, a little bit softer, and give more space because they're not as quick. So we're going to just talk a little bit about my general rules of thumb and the way you play defense. So one is if the ball is high, you play high. So the ball is high here, right? It's with the other team's goalie, we're assuming. So I'm going to try to get my cursor over there if I can. Okay, so the ball is high. If the ball goes low, you move low. So that's a pretty simple one. Ball is high, you play high. The next is sorry, a little mishap here. When the players are higher in the pool, you have to play lower. So what this is an example of is you can see the guys at 1 and 5 are much higher. Even the center is much higher. And if you play too high on them at this point, you're going to get beat behind you. So the higher they're playing in the pool, the lower that you're going to have to play in the pool. But you're still going to need to play low enough, but still in direct line so the ball can't be passed out. Okay, next is the further away the ball is from you, the further away you play. So these lines are used to show you that the further the ball is away from you, the further away you can actually play from your player. And the reason being is the ball has all the time that it has to travel in the air. So you can be further away so you can have time while that ball is traveling to get back to your player if you need. So the higher the ball, okay, the closer the ball is, the closer that you have to play. So you can see, sorry, I'll go back real quick. You can see the guy at X3 now is the closest of the players. The guy at X2, and I guess the overall rule of thumb for any general player guarding any general player would be for every position you are away from where the ball is, you're 1 stroke away. So if I'm at X3 right now, I'm 1 position or I'm 1 stroke away. At X2, I'm 2 strokes away. X1, I'm 3 strokes away. So that's the general rule of thumb that I teach by. And the last is the center defender. And I actually said AKA the MVP. And I mean that seriously because I think in a lot of ways in our sport, like when you talk about most valuable players in your relationship with a coach and a player, there's probably not one that's more valuable than the one that you have with your center defender because they have to be so much on the same page of you because you're often, or at least the way that I'm coaching, I'm not necessarily worried about what they're doing. I'm dictating to the perimeter players what to do. And they're like communicating with the players out there as well. And so we have this like working relationship back and forth. The biggest issue I see with center defenders is this. Who is the center defender? Sorry, I should have shut up right away. My bad. Oh, my bad, guys. Sorry. It's a virtual world. The biggest issue I see with center defenders is that, like, when I ask kids or if I ever go do a clinic, like, who's the center defender here? Like, you get the one kid that raises his hand. You want the mentality that everyone on your team is a center defender. Everyone has to be capable to defend the center. Super important concept that there is not honestly, if you're a smaller player and you think that you're not a center defender, you're probably the player that's going to have to play center defense the most. So get that out of your head right away that they're like, we have someone that we would prefer to guard center, but that doesn't mean that there are other players that aren't center defenders. So how do you play? The goal of the center defender is simple. You want to maintain in front or ball side position by the following. You want to anticipate the movement of the ball. So similar to our perimeter players, we want to anticipate the ball so we can move and take away that position. How do you anticipate? You're going to watch the perimeter players. So my head's on a swivel. I'm looking to see what's going on around me. I'm knowing the tendencies of the team. Like I know, if I'm playing this team, they love to outlet the ball to the right side. They love to swing the ball from 4 to 2. They're really good at releasing at the 2 position. I'm watching the ball. And I'm listening and watching my goalie. One of the best tricks that you can do, your goalie, if you're fronting, your goalie is watching the ball. So if you look at your goalie's face, you can actually just determine where he's looking in the pool. You can determine where the ball is. So it's a really good little trick. And the next is you want to continue to move and move and have space to get around. So you never want to play so close to the center that you can't have any space to continue to move around. Now, there's a million ways that people teach to move and do all that kind of stuff to get around. Obviously, we're in a virtual world. I can't do that. But for coaches, I encourage you to try lots of different ways. And obviously, players are going to lend themselves to different ways of doing things too. So really quickly, I highlight here some center defense things that I think are important. One, the first thing is the goal of the center defender is to get on your back. Okay, get on your back and get out in front of transition. The reason this is so important is that you have to, at minimum, take away ball side initially. That is the minimum requirement. I tell every player on our team, you have to take ball side position on the very first pass. Okay, and so you have to be watching the ball and predicting where it's going to be outletted to. Easy ways to predict, just watch the other team's goalie who's ever outletting the ball, and they're going to give away by what they're looking at where the ball is. Or you can see the open players in the perimeter and make general assumptions about where they're going to throw the ball out to. Now, the next is that you don't want to let him go by you. Oh, sorry, I went too fast. You don't want to let him go by you until about the 4-meter line. Because if you stop above at 5 or 6 meters, and I can't get my cursor over there for some reason, but above him, which right now, and you let him go by now, he's going to seal underneath. And especially with the new rules, it's really easy to get the ball down and then in. So we're watching to see where the ball is being outletted. We're seeing the ball being outletted right. We're sliding into position and we're taking ball side. And so from this position now, we're trying to predict where the ball is going to go next. Now, the assumption would probably be the 4 is going to throw the ball to 3 or to 2. And so it's our perimeter player's job to slow that movement down as much as possible. We went over that, put as much pressure on the ball without fouling, staying in opposition. So hopefully that ball is slamming the water, which is going to give you time to move. But your job is to continue to be aware and to start making those movements, and you want to beat the center to that position. So as the ball moves, I continue to move and maintain ball side position. So I have a decent clip of this here of just some center defense stuff. I know this is tough to watch because it's kind of laggy on your end. Whoop. So here's a practice that I filmed actually, and it's a little 4-on-4, but you're going to see some center defense movements here. So the ball is going from 2 to 3, and I want you to also watch the perimeter players, and they're doing a really good job of putting pressure, not fouling, and making predictable passes, which is allowing the center defender to move. So here's I stopped right here. The ball's at 3. You can see that if this player's going to get the ball, it's going to have to land way out here. Okay, and if it lands way out here, it's going to give him time to continue to play in front. So we're doing a good job pressing, not fouling, taking away that next logical pass. Okay, and again, so the ball lands way out here. The center has now had time to reposition again. Now, again, we're in that good pressing position where we're denying the movement of the ball back here. You can see the player at X2. The ball can't be thrown directly here. If it's going to be thrown, it's going to have to be thrown way out here, which is forcing a player to leave and move away from the goal and giving us time again, which I think we do a good job again here. But you can see the effort that we have to put in defensively. Ball lands in the water, and you can see the center defenders anticipate that movement, actually taking strokes before the center is starting to move, and we're getting back in front again. So that's a really good clip. A not so good clip, this is CIF finals, where we're out of 6-on-5, and actually one of the interesting things, I don't know if he's still on the line, but Jack Coker has talked a lot about it, getting beat out of counterattack, and I think it's a really good point and something I hadn't thought about, but you often get beat out of 6-on-5s because you're worried about the shot. You have 4 guys on that back line or that top line. And so here we're doing a really poor job. There's no pressure on the ball. you can see all these players open. So if even you can't see the center defender at this point, but assuming they've taken ball side, this ball now can swing all the way over to 2, and they now immediately have ball side position. And so there's 2 elements of this. One, the center defender that you can see here at the top of the screen shouldn't have been siding yet because he's at 5 meters or above 6 meters. But we also did a poor job as perimeter players just letting the ball move across the goal right to players' hands. And so now we're pinned, and this almost, I think, results in a goal. I think he misses. He does miss, but obviously right into an entry and a really good look. So we're getting to the end of our time, and I hope that if I did anything today that is, I hopefully allowed a little bit better understanding that all these phases of the game are so interconnected. And so a lot of times to not always be obsessed with the phase of the game that you think you're failing in, but often it's something else that you're doing wrong, whether it's your transition defense and not finishing in correct defensive position, or it's your front court offense and you're just turning the ball over. You have a player that's playing not in your system, or defensively, it may be that your players are fouling so the ball can move everywhere. So I have just like quick little wheel here where, again, a good front court offense, it's well balanced, limits turnovers and no goal line shots, allows for us to anticipate and protect. Okay, that allows us to take ball side position, to get into our press, to limit the amount of shots they're taking, forces turnovers, gives us more possessions, which when we start talking about front court offense is going to be important because we want more possessions to score. It's going to get us higher percentage scoring opportunities because, as we know, these forced turnovers are going to lead to often a top line counterattack opportunities, and because there's a short buffer between us and we can pull through. Then it's going to allow us, if we didn't score that, to move the ball. I think Coach Mercado had a great point. Move the ball to the side the center's position to. That forces them into a zone. And if they're in a zone, if they get them in a zone defense, again, it allows us then to get back on defense and to get protected and stay in our press. So that kind of does it for today. Are there any questions before we end? I know I'm like 3 minutes over. I'm sorry. This is my boys on the call are laughing because I go over practice time every time as well. So are there any questions before we finish up?
This is Felix again, and maybe and probably not right now, but maybe next time. Is it possible for you to go over like your favorite counterattack defensive drill? Like this is great, but I'd like to, if you can, or if we have time next time, is like to go over like this is the best drill I do when we're trying to put all this together, because I think it would help.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to go over some drills and things like that. I may even do like a little spin-off just because like we have so many athletes on this. Like I'm not necessarily sure that they need that as much as like we could talk about it through coaches, but it's a great idea. I love it. Are there any other questions? I'll do my best to upload the video so that you guys can get a copy of it. If you want a copy of the presentation, I want to share this is our community and family together. So if you want it, feel free to reach out. But I appreciate it, and I miss all you guys, and I hope everyone stays healthy and well, and I'll see you guys next week.
I have a question.
Yeah, hit me.
How does an offense best respond
what was
to
that?
the pressure defense?
What was that?
How should an offense best respond to a pressure defense?
Well, it's a really good question. So if you're thinking about the kind of the way we broke it down is that there might be an issue with their front court defense in the first place, that they didn't do a good enough job like forcing turnovers that didn't allow them to create opportunities in transition. So the easiest way to break a press is through movement, right? And so that's going to be in the counterattack and in the front court, like releases and driving and movement so the ball can move, because we want to the defense, right, like wants to limit the direct line passes, where if we can create opportunities in which like we have advantages or we can create ball side position, that's when we're going to want the way we're going to want to break it. But again, I would encourage, a lot of times when a team is you're struggling with a team because they're pressing you so hard, it has to do with the fact that you didn't do a good job getting out in transition. And that might have been because you didn't do a good enough job initially pressing to force turnovers so you can get out in transition on them. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Any other
Brian, quick question.
Yeah, shoot.
Is this going to be a weekly thing?
Yeah. I like these presentations take me a decent amount of time, so I don't know if I can do twice a week, but I'm definitely going to be on at least once a week. Absolutely.
Okay. Great.
And Mike, we're going to offer other classes too. So I don't know if you heard me
Okay.
in the meeting, but like Coach Lathrop did some, and we'll do a whole bunch of different classes through the week. I obviously want to continue coaching and working with you guys and seeing the kids and seeing the coaches. So we'll definitely.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Brian.
Coach.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye, everyone. Bye, guys.
Later.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Brian.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Brian.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See you on the deck soon.
See you on the deck. Have a good one.
All right.
Coach Brian,
Yeah.
what'd you say was the website with all the?
Totalwaterpolo.com.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.